Once again, a welcome to this panel discussion on the topic Development of National Assets. The host of this session is Mr. Tejas Sura. I'd like to introduce him to you. Mr. Tejas Sura has over 15 years of experience in construction management and general management. He is a postgraduate in civil engineering, a certified PMP, and a graduate of PMI's Leadership Institute Masterclass. He is a recipient of PMI's Recognition of Excellence Award for Component Leadership for his stint as the President of the Mumbai Chapter, India. He was part of the construction extension of PMBOK Guide, the 3rd edition development team. He is involved in developing PMBOK Guide 5th edition and as a champion advisor committee member for PMI India. He is pre-appointed as region mentor for PMI's Western Asia region. Ladies and gentlemen, our host for the session, Mr. Tejas Sura. Please give him a big round of applause. I'd like to introduce all of you to the panel members. Joining us on the panel is Colonel H.S. Shankar. A brief introduction. Backed by a brilliant academic record, including a university rank in BE from the Mysore University and a distinction in ME from the Indian Institute of Science, Colonel H.S. Shankar, VSM, served the Army with distinction for 22 years. Apart from the Vishish Seva Medal, he is also the recipient of the award for outstanding contribution to defense R&D. Starting as a Deputy General Manager, R&D in Bharat Electronics after leaving the Army, Colonel Shankar became General Manager of the Hyderabad unit and finally Director R&D, from which position he retired in March 2003. Ladies and gentlemen, he is presently CMD of Alpha Design Technologies Private Limited. He's here with us. I'd like to request all of you to please give him a big round of applause as we welcome him to this panel session. So we'd like to welcome you to this panel discussion. The panel anchor for this session is Professor Krishnamurthy. A brief introduction. He holds a PhD from the University of Twente, the Netherlands. Professor Krishnamurthy holds an MS in electronics and a postgraduate diploma in computing and MBA degree. Moving to academics, higher education that is relevant to real-life industrial project environment, he has been involved in educational initiatives in France, Hungary, and India. A project management evangelist, authoring various published articles, his area of focus is project management framework, risk, bidding, and project control through tools. After heading IIIT Pune for 5 years, he moved over to Larsen & Toubro, headed the Center for Technology and Engineering Applications. Professor Krishnamurthy is currently Dean of the Institute of Project Management established by the company. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Krishnamurthy, who will be anchoring this session. Joining them on the panel is M. Nageshwar Rao. Mr. M. Nageshwar Rao began his career at ISRO Satellite Center in September 1982. Starting with the Electrical Integration Division, he worked on various software development programs in spacecraft design and manufacturing, playing a major role in the realization of several spacecraft and in the realization of launching and recovery of India's first space capsule recovery experiment, the SRE. Presently, Mr. N.R. Rao is Project Director for the Indian Regional Navigational Satellite System Space Segment and also for GSAT-14 spacecraft, responsible for realization of 7 satellites for the regional constellation and 2 ground spares. He's the author of more than 30 technical papers in various international and national journals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this afternoon to the panel, Mr. M. Nageshwar Rao. We'd also like to welcome to the panel Mr. Tanmoy Chakravarti, Vice President and Global Head, Government Industry Solutions Unit, TCS. Mr. Tanmoy Chakravarti has over 2 decades of experience in business development and delivery of solutions to the government sector and has led enterprise-wide and holistic transformational projects and solutions to the government sector and has led transformation projects in the area of e-governance globally. Mr. Tanmoy Chakravarti holds a bachelor's degree in commerce from St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, and is an MBA from IIM Calcutta. He's a member of the IT subcommittee at CII, FICCI, and PhD CCI. He's on the Defense IT Subcommittee for FICCI. Additionally, he's a member of the IT Task Force of the Chief of Air Staff, the Indian Air Force, and a member of the IT think tank for the Chief of Army Staff, Indian Army. Prior to TCS, he was head of the India Sales and Operations at EDS and serves as Vice President, Sales and Marketing in Siemens Nixdorf. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this afternoon Mr. Pranmoy Chakravarti. I'd like to request Mr. Tejas Sura, our host, to welcome him to this event. Joining them on the panel is Mr. Rakesh Barak. Mr. Rakesh Barak is currently a director with Deloitte US India Consulting Offices and also the regional service line leader for Oracle Packages, business and managing director for the Mumbai office. He has been with Deloitte for over 10 years and has worked with its Chicago office for several years. Mr. Rakesh was responsible for setting up and leading the first few customer relationship management projects involving Deloitte's offshore delivery capabilities. He has over 15 years of experience in architecting, designing, and implementing CRM engagements. He also has expertise in client-server-based custom application design and development in the financial services and high-tech industries. He's very active in community service. He has been involved in many initiatives, including some award-winning programs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this afternoon to the panel, Mr. Rakesh Barak. I'd like to request our host, Mr. Tejas, to welcome him with a bouquet. And last but not least, joining them on the panel is Mr. Jeremy Lambert. Academically a postgraduate, Jeremy Lambert is presently Program Director with Larsen & Toubro, EPC. He has over 20 years of professional experience, predominantly in major infrastructure projects in the Far East, India, and the Middle East, the United Kingdom, and Central America for power stations, airports, and major rail infrastructure. The Channel Tunnel in the UK, Czech Labcock Airport in Hong Kong, the KLIA in Malaysia, and the Haramain high-speed rail in Saudi Arabia are some of the feathers in his cap. Currently playing a significant role on the Hyderabad Metro Rail project, he is investigating different approaches to project planning beyond the vanilla of critical path methodology, seeking improvements and new ideas and methods. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Jeremy Lambert. We'd like to welcome him to this panel discussion. Request our host stages to welcome him with a bouquet. Thank you, Mr. Tejas. I'd like to now hand over the mic to the panel anchor, Professor Krishnamurthy, for the opening remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are not sleeping after a nice lunch. What we are going to do in the next 1.5 hours, maybe, is to talk about national assets. Before we go into that, I want to talk about the framework, how we are going to do this. After my initial introduction to the topic, I'm going to throw some questions at our panel, great panelists here. We have an assortment of panelists, and they will give their thought process on this. In the meantime, you can think about some questions. We have passed around the question sheet. You can fill them up. By the time we go through the second round, all the questions would come to me. We will start taking your questions at the end of the second or the third round. Is that okay with you? Wonderful. All right. Let me ask you a fundamental question before I get into the definition. Do you think that national asset creation is necessary for the growth of any country? Yes? Raise your hand. Oh, very good. I have got a lot of people who say it is important. Wonderful. Let me get back to this. Right in the morning, Dr. Sam Pitroda made my life easier because he started off talking about national asset creation. If you say this, NKN, National Knowledge Network, is a national asset. He started off with that. When you look at national asset creation, there are two types of national assets. As professor, I should define it first so that the panelists will focus on that national asset concept. There are two types of national assets for any nation. One is what is called the economic national asset, the other one is what is called a social national asset. The economic national assets are assets like highways, roadways, waterways, all kind of things are associated with that. The telecommunication, satellites, these are all there. Then we have the social national assets, which are hospitals, waterworks, sewerage systems, and all kind of rail, whatever. At the end of the day, all these national asset creations start off with a fundamental premise that investment as a project, they are typically long term. There is nothing like a short term project, very, very long term. So if you were to look at these national assets from a typical project management perspective, the economic value which you derive out of this project cannot be measured as short term. It has to be measured very, very long term. The investment requirements are also huge, massive. So over a period of time, it could be 30 years, 60 years, you start recovering the returns out of the national asset. Various countries have progressed based on the creation of national assets. I would like to start off with a country like United States. I don't know how many of you know this. During the Second World War, as the Commander-in-Chief, President Eisenhower, he was a bit hospitalized in Europe, and he was taken through the Autobahn of Germany. That is when he realized that there is a need to create a national road network in the US. All he did was, when he came back to the US, he created a national policy on asset creation and created all the road networks that you see in the US. The progress thereafter is enormous, which you can see yourself. Similarly, when you look at the education system in the US, the university system required a national asset creation. How did he do that? Basically creating universities under what is called the land grant universities. That means there was an involvement of the institution like government in creation of a national asset. Over a period of time, that has led to the progress of that country. Countries like Australia, they also have a national asset policy. And how do they manage this? We are going to learn that today in the panel discussion. So, with these kind of opening remarks, I want to go over to the first question, and I'm going to throw it open to the panelists, not in any order. You can start off from there. The first question is, of course, our participants have said national asset creation is important for economic growth. The question is, building national assets is a key indicator of growth and development of the country. And how well are we in India building national assets today, and what are our focus areas? That's a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and great pleasure to be with all of you young, middle-aged, and my age group friends, ladies and gentlemen. This important topic which the chairman introduced, I would like to take a portion of it, because asset building can be a very vast area, and if each one of us start talking on all the areas, then the focus would be lost. So I would like to focus with respect to asset building, with respect to R&D, research and development. And that is a favorite question and favorite requirement, and an important requirement today in our country. And with my little bit of experience that I have had as the Director R&D of Bharat Electronics for about more than 8 years, now as the Chairman of a research and developmental organization which is purely involved in the R&D with respect to the defense forces and the defense equipment, I thought I could say a few words on that topic. The problem is that we have a methodology or an approach in almost all age groups that anything we would like to do in this field of research and development, we expect that the government of India or the state governments should fund it. And only with that sort of a funding, then we would like to develop the projects and products. In quite a few cases, people have seen, individuals as well as industries, spend a lot of time in getting this clearances and all that from the government, and then try to take up that project. That itself will take 3 to 4 years in a country of our size, and with the bureaucracy that is there at all stages. The solution could be what could be done by ourselves, what could be done by the various industries, small scale, medium scale and big scale. All of us have got certain resources, certain turnover, certain sales, certain profit margins. Can we put aside a portion of this by ourselves within our own means and develop an R&D base in various areas in which we are working? All these things can add up together into a national asset instead of going over and developing all the time a requirement of government funding. I would like to give one or two instances with respect to that. If you ask me as an individual, as a 68-year-old chap, what has been your greatest achievement so far? Unhesitatingly, I will say that I participated along with a few of my colleagues. One of them may be here, Mr. Shivanandam is part of the management crowd here. We developed and built the electronic voting machines.
Wonderful.
You will agree with me, the thrill that gives is that the whole of India today, all those who go for participating in the elections, whether he is a villager, a poor man or a rich man or whatever may be the case, he touches that electronic voting machine in which I have participated in developing and productionizing. Now, that is, and when we did that, believe me, it was done purely under the aegis of another great person by name Colonel G.K. Rao for the trade union elections in Bharat Electronics. Then it was given to the election commission. They put that in the 3 constituencies in Kerala. Then it was very much welcomed by the electorate. But then they had to pass a law in the parliament for changing the methodology of the voting methodology from a ballot box to the electronic voting machine. And that law took 3 years' time. And during the time of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, and later on, this was introduced into service. When we did that, there was a small problem. In the sense, the chip that we had used was from Japan, Hitachi. And we could not get that chip as a delivery from Japan in the required time that we wanted. So at that time, we went over and we arranged a meeting with the Japanese ambassador, and he came over there. He was bowing from head to bottom all the time, and he said the private industry in Japan do not take the orders from the government of India. So we went over there. He arranged for a visit. We went to Hitachi, and when we went over there, we took the counsel in the Indian embassy in Tokyo as a member of our team, and he knew Japanese. So when we were discussing about it, we had taken an electronic voting machine and we showed it to them that this is what it is. The director of Hitachi, he saw that, and then along with his 2 of his people, he started talking and said something in Japanese between them. Then he said, I will let you know tomorrow. Next day we had another meeting in which he said it will be given to you. This quantities which you wanted, 150,000 numbers of these chips will be given to you for you to put your software onto it, to embed your software. And then we asked our counsel as to why they have changed their decision. And this gentleman told a very interesting thing which I am sure, particularly the young crowd would like to know that. He said, that person, Noko, he was a Japanese, he was a Buddhist. And
Closer.
hello?
Yeah.
So he was a Buddhist, and he said, after all, Buddha has emanated from India. And Buddhists were the first one to start democracy in their classes, which they called it as Saka. They always used to elect whoever is the volunteer for that particular group. So he said they are from India, they are from Buddha's land, and it is for a noble cause. He said the chip which they were supposed to have sent to United States for being used on some of the gambling machines in Las Vegas, which was already booked. He said, this is a holier cause, better cause than sending to Las Vegas and other areas, because this is for democracy and this is for Buddha's land. So that was the spirit with which people take it. What I mean to say in this only one point I would like to make is, when you build up the asset should come from innovation and a spirit of adventure and a spirit of taking challenges. And for that, you don't require too many major projects. You don't require a new metro to be built, new aircraft to be built. Some of the simple things which are of great importance to people and which large number of people could use, and which has got a focus and a purpose in life, and that is the most important thing to consider. The second aspect I would like to inform and tell is that there is a sort of a craze for making money or taking money or going for a higher end task which gives you only extra money to you as young people. In my opinion, the best way would be develop your talent, do the work, and when you have the talent, the things will come to you. And that may be the right way in which you can approach.
Thank you, Colonel.
So this is what I would like to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you very
for
much.
giving me an opportunity.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. Rakesh?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's really daunting to stand right after lunch and talking about developing national assets. So why don't we talk about you? If you look at, Colonel talk about electronic voting machine. Who's the man behind that machine? That's you. You are the asset of this nation. So why don't I, with your permission, can you focus on talent as a national asset? Maybe it is in the space, maybe it is in governance, maybe it is in electronic voting machine. If you look at us as project manager, this is August company of many project managers sitting here. I think our landscape of project management is changing. I think the challenges that we were facing 10 years back, running big projects, and challenges that we are facing today are different. I think the way we managed EVM 10 years back, the way we'll manage EVM 10 years from now is going to be different. So what is that we should be doing in building this talent pool? That national asset, our talent. It's a Gen Y, everybody is in Facebook, Twitter, social media, mobility, cloud. Every day you open a newspaper, you hear something new word coming up. Managing in that world is different. So in my opinion, in my perspective, a certain segment of your project management community is getting exposed to this new ways of doing things. So what is that we can do to make it across the broader India, 1.2 billion population? What is that we can do today to build somebody who can do what you're doing today? In my mind, building national talent is finding, a national asset is finding another individual, another asset that you can personally stay invested in and build. One builds other builds somebody else. In the process, we build chain of national assets. That's our talent. Second part is about integrity. When you are managing projects, managing programs in a global forum, there is a lot of, the stakeholders are different. And all of us do stakeholder analysis. Our stakeholders are very different when you're managing a global program in the scale in the 2020. So how can we manage that project with highest standards of professional ethics and integrity? Becomes extremely important for us.
Thank you, Rakesh.
So those are the two perspectives that I wanted to share around building national talent.
Thank you, Bud.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from the government organization. I'm going to talk how the Indian Space Research Organization has built the national asset. I'm going to talk in that perspective only. Let me start how the access to the space is a national asset. I'm sure today's August gathering is well aware of the benefits derived from the space. I don't have to emphasize anything because today, wherever you are, you are able to know your position, your exact timings, and today you don't have to plan, tomorrow holiday is coming, I am going to get money from the bank or not. Wherever you go, the money is available on the road. That is because of the benefit that we are getting from the space. So before getting into the nouns of space assets, let me dwell upon some of the historic quest mankind for exploration of and dominance in the space. Exploration of Earth has started, then we want to know each other's, and when you want to go, you want to communicate with them, and you want to have seamless communication across the continents, which is provided by the space. And if you see today, you can reach anywhere on the Earth precisely from space, and you are on the ground, you will know your position very precisely within a centimeters of accuracy, and time is also very precisely available. And I will be providing access to space, pivotal role in getting people together, breaking barriers and national prosperity. And space as a national established by the erstwhile USSR and Americans, because they identified there is a lot of potential, we have to reap the benefits from the space, and accordingly they launched their first satellite in 1957 by USSR, and subsequently 3 months later from the Americans. And during those days, the technocrats in India also thinking we also should go to the space. During those days, India is an underdeveloped country or just entering into the developing phase, just we got our independence, but our forefathers have got a very good vision, thought they should go for the space. Actually, people were started questioning why you should go to the space, because we don't have the roads, we don't have the basic infrastructure, what is the point in going for the space? But the visionaries like Vikram Sarabhai asked the question. The question is not whether it is relevant that India embark on a space program or not, but it is relevant to ask ourselves whether we can afford not to embark on the space program. So with that, they have a strong conviction. They thought we should go for that. And quickly I will go through how we build today our space programs and where we are. We are second to none today in the world, and India never behind developed countries in realizing the potential of space applications. So 62, a INCOSPAR, Indian National Committee for Space Research, was formed. That is just 5 years after the Americans. And 63, we have our own rocket launcher from the Tumba. And we have 67 satellite telecommunication experiment was conducted. And 75, we have the satellite instructional television experiment from the borrowed satellite from American. And evolution of space access. So missiles to rockets it has come. And then we have gone to sounding rockets. Today we have environmental monitoring satellites and very big fleet of communication satellite. And Gagan is an important in this national assets, space as a national asset, because Americans has got a system called VAS, and European has built a EGNOS, and there is Japanese have built called MSAS. Then you have the aircraft is fitted with this satellite augmented receiver, and the aircraft is coming from Europe or in America. They want to land in India. Once you don't have this type of system, augmented system, the receiver will become useless, and the pilot will think it is difficult to land in India. So with the Gagan, today what we are having, and the aircraft can start from anywhere in the world, and seamlessly it can fly without any ground navigation aid and any harsh conditions. So today we have built such type of national asset. So how well are we building space assets? That's the next question.
Yeah, can we go to that next one?
Yes.
Let me go through this after the next round, you can take up that issue. I just want to add to what he said. Basically, if you look at space, it gives you three types of assets. One is the economic asset, the social assets, and the defense assets. Communication, and of course education, which is through the EduSat. So you have multiplicity of objectives met in that kind of an asset. This is a kind of a creation of a national asset for growth again. So shall we get your thoughts on this one? Yeah.
Firstly, it's a pleasure to be in Bangalore. It was the city of my home from 93 to 96. I spent 3 very good years in Bangalore, and it's a pleasure to be back and a pleasure to see so many people involved in a post-lunch session with so much of interest. I think from my perspective, what I would like to add is that when we look at the evolution of our country, the definition of creation of a national asset based on the fundamental principle that our leadership adopted when we got independent was that government was the sole responsibility, took the sole responsibility for building national assets. And that is manifested itself in the several plan periods that we have seen from 1950 onwards. And I think in the 90s, there was a realization that for serving a population of this kind of a country, it was beyond the wherewithal of the government alone to be the sole creator of national assets. And that is where you saw more and more involvement of the foreign direct investment as well as private sector participation in accelerating the creation of national assets. Again, in the 50s, for example, it was very relevant for the government to set up a chain of hotels because there was no hotel industry. In the 60s, late 60s and 70s, the government created an organization called STPI, which was indeed the catalyst to create the industry that I belong to today, which is the IT industry. So the government, to my understanding, needs to be the enabler and the catalyst to create the visioning of what national assets should be. And to my understanding, there is a thriving private sector with a lot of innovative capabilities and skills and program management capability that should be brought forward, encouraged to accelerate the process of creation of national assets. Just let me bring this down to some kind of a tangible example. We have the railways, which is an infrastructure that we have all over the country, and the railways has approximately 250,000 wagons in which they carry freight all over the country. And this example I'm giving from an IT perspective because what I do in my life is to look at how IT can enable or transform governance or transform the way people live their lives or interact with government. Imagine if there was an opportunity for the railways to create an ability to track every wagon as to where it is on a GIS map and to be able to ensure that every optimal kilometer of that wagon being moved around the country had adequate freight in those wagons. I mean, you know, all know about the kind of coal rakes that are there which go from point to point and come back empty. Imagine the ability and the amount of freight that we could move away from the roads, thereby reducing pollution of diesel and all the emissions. If we were able to have an application that could announce that this amount of capacity of rakes is now available to move from city A to city B, and here is a freight cost which is probably at a discount of the road freight cost, and that could move the freight from the road to the railways. I'm just trying to give an example of a national asset which is suboptimally utilized today, which has an opportunity through an inflection of a simple technological solution like a GPRS tagging on a GIS map, the ability to transform the green environment that it can create, move the freight back to the railways where it originally belonged, and railways kept losing it over time to the road, and how a transformed country we could have leveraging a national asset. I just want you to consider, and there are endless number of examples that can be discussed, debated, which simple injection of technology can bring about a huge transformation and bring about a huge change in the way we live our lives. So the importance of creating national assets, and most importantly, optimally using national assets, I think is something that should merit our consideration. It is not enough to create, but it is enough to enjoy the optimal benefits out of that investment is the point that I would like to make here.
Thank you, Tanmay. We have with us somebody from UK who has moved into this country trying to create one of the national assets for the country. So we'll have a different perspective from a person who has created national assets in UK and about India now. Jeremy? Your thoughts?
Thank you very much, Professor. The question is, can you confirm that the creation of national assets are a demonstration of the development of a country? Let's turn the clock back to the 19th century across the globe and look at what was happening in various countries then, and then ask ourselves reflectively whether the development that was done in the 19th century developed those countries. The biggest development in most countries in the 19th century was railways. In India, UK, Russia, America, railways were the forefront of the industry that I'm in, which is infrastructure. Today, we are so reliant on railways that the countries we live in and work in wouldn't operate without them. So from a historical perspective, I think it's fair to say absolutely national assets demonstrate the growth of a country. We now move forward to where we are today in countries. And if we look from two projects that I've had the privilege of working on, you can see two differing perspectives of development of national assets. In Hong Kong, at the back end of the 90s, it was recognized that the existing airport did not have the capacity to accommodate the passenger flows, the traffic flows, and the movement of goods in and out of Hong Kong. By 1997, they'd rebuilt the airport on an island that now, today, can handle 80 million passenger movements per annum. In doing so, they created a national asset that changed the perspective of Hong Kong from users, people who live near Kai Tak, and the business and social development of Hong Kong. A fantastic example of a visionary government and a visionary authority that took forward an idea and made it happen. It was delivered by a combination of international organizations following the processes and methodologies that we today know as program project management, and it was a success. Now then, here's the rub. That a previous project I was involved in was the biggest civil engineering tunnel operation in the world, the Channel Tunnel. Took several years to build. In excess of 25,000 people worked on the project. In 2006, in a review of the economics of the Channel Tunnel, it was concluded by the government of the day that, in essence, it was uneconomical. Isn't that interesting that you get one project that delivers tremendous benefit and another, a fantastic project, but doesn't deliver the benefit that was anticipated? Professor Muti at the beginning of this session suggested that assets give us two things. They give us economic benefit. Well, for sure, Hong Kong Airport gave Hong Kong economic benefit, and definitely gives them the second consideration of social benefit. The Channel Tunnel, for all the fantastic engineering and the undertaking, there is questionable economic benefit. But socially, and the migration of holiday makers and the people travelling back to and forward from the UK and France is tremendous. There is evidence today that people live in France and travel up to London on the high-speed link. So economically, no. Socially, definite. The challenge going forward for national asset development is, first and foremost, there will always be the question of economic benefit. That has to be balanced with a wider question of social benefit. Up until today, most things have been measured on economic terms. As we go forward in this century, in the next coming few years, the guys here that are across technology will argue that the social benefits of technology are much more important to them and their users than perhaps some of the economic benefits. And we can wait for the economic, but we need the social benefits. So to conclude, yes, national assets can demonstrate growth for the country, both in economic and social terms, but there is a cautionary tale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. When I started, I gave the opinion that national asset creation is typically a combination of economic and social benefits. This morning when Sam Pitroda was talking about, he was talking about creation of a national knowledge network. If you look at it from pure economic point of view, it may not be successful, but the spin-offs and the benefits that can accrue to a country like ours will be enormous. That brings me to the next question. Jeremy said that typically all these assets are generally created by the governments across the world, but over a period of time, instead of these assets getting reflected on the treasury balance sheet, it has started moving towards the balance sheet of the private. That means there is a public-private partnership that is happening. Why do we do this? There is a reason to create these assets faster than anybody so that the progress is achieved. So the question to the panel is, okay, what are the key factors that influence in India building of national assets? How is your organization associated or contributing towards this directly or indirectly? That's a question. Yeah? Does it work? Yeah.
You know, one of the examples I will give which is a success. I would give the example of ISRO, our space research organization. From the beginning, if I may say so on your behalf, sir, because I have been participating in your programs from ISRO, from Bharat Electronics, they made out a scheme that the basic overall design of a spacecraft would be done by ISRO, including the satellite, and that would be formed out to the various industries, both in the public sector domain and in the private sector domain. And where it is to be procured as subsystems from abroad, you launch a two-pronged sort of a program to buy it initially and parallelly get it developed in India. So there is an R&D base created, there is a production base created, there is an integration base created. That's why, in my opinion, as a citizen, ISRO is a very good example and a success story. Where this sort of an integrated scheme happens, that is for the best. The chairman mentioned in his opening address about the various infrastructure projects, including the road building, the highways and all that, how United States embarked upon it years, tens of years back, immediately after the Second World War, and what probably today also it is happening in various parts of the country. The communication, the interlinking, it has to be a public-private relationship to build ultimately the national asset. Again, reverting back to the small item called as the electronic voting machine, though the design has been from us, quite a few of the components, quite a few of the subsystems, we got it done in the private sector industries at that time, which is still continuing. This sort of a scheme, if it is adopted in more and more projects and more organizations, instead of drawing the boundary lines, I am public sectors, you are private sector, you are a big scale private sector, small scale private sector, medium scale private sector. If there is an integrated system of approach, the assets could be built in a faster manner, and also it will be more effective, and it will benefit the mankind and our own people more than anything else.
Thank you. Rakesh?
I will continue the theme on the talent part of the asset. You know, if you look at, Professor was talking about government and private and public synergies. You know, corporate and academia. How could we feed, you know, from corporate to the academia, and we define what's going on in the academics, which is aligned with the next generation corporate. So I'm from a services industry. I do consulting business. I go to our clients, and we talk to our clients about their business challenges. So if we go back to our schools and colleges and spend some time with our, you know, the next generation youth which is coming into corporate, those who will be building these national assets, going to be part of, you know, this growth. I think that's the grassroots change that we need to do, number one. Number two is corporate social responsibility. You know, we talked about integrity in the first phase of our discussion. It's about we all as corporates and private organization, you know, government and public and private are not two different things in my mind. I think it has to merge, and somewhere it has to mix. So as private house, and how could we work with a corporate social responsibility for the society that we're part of? How could we help, you know, the NGOs and put a project management methodology for them? How could we help, you know, the grassroots work that is happening and structure it more better? How could we help them manage their, you know, budget, their risks, everything that we do in our project management landscape? How could we take this knowledge that we acquired and apply it to the grassroots work that we are doing? And then that's going to help build this national asset. So that's my perspective around talent.
Thank you. Nageshwar?
The key factor that ISRO considers as building the national asset is the social requirement is the topmost priority. That's what we take in any project. New applications to help the common man at any corner of the country. It is not the people living in the city, any part of the country should get benefit. And for example, today we have taken one application, it's called satellite identification, ship identification device, which you have flown in the recently launched ResourceSat 2 spacecraft. In that, any ship traveling on the around the thing, satellite will detect, and you can see whether any of our ship is missing or somebody else's shipping is coming into our zone, so that the security, some sort of alerts you can take, and whatever we have seen recent mishaps can be avoided. And available technology that can be done with what is available today within the country, and technological maturity demonstrated through experimental satellites, and technological obsolescence also we have to keep in mind, and adapt to dynamic situation with alternate technology available. And the self-reliance and indigenization is the topmost priority. Today we are, as Shankar told, we are developing lot of industry in the India, so that most of the things can be outsourced from the private industry. And what in the industry also, what getting benefited, the moment somebody says that, for example, all of our state-of-the-art cryogenic engine is built by one private company from Hyderabad. And one is quoting, we are making some component to Indian Space Research Organization, and Boeing or the Airbus company has come. They given a huge order to them because they have the certificate of ISRO as a quality. Because in the space, there is nothing like we can repair it. Once you launch it, the satellite has to survive on its own, and you cannot get back and repair it. So we talk about such type of quality standards. So they, once anybody is associated with ISRO, also will get that type of recognition. So now we have lot of facilities. We support lot of private and public enterprises within India. We don't keep them with us. So we build whatever the assets we build, it is available for throughout the India. And we have built lot of applications. So the VSAT-based services, DTH services, and the satellite-based telemedicines and teleeducation, e-governance, and lot of metallurgical applications, and then satellite aided and search and rescue operations, and even when the first satellite when we have built, that is INSAT-1, and regular, so far nobody has built a multi-purpose satellite like that. The same satellite, keeping our economic constraints and our technological complexities, we have built a satellite which can be used for the communications as well as the meteorological applications with VHRR and type of imaging, and also search and rescue payload and data collection platforms. Because any meteorological prediction you want to make, you cannot make only from the cloud imaging. You need to have what is the wind temperature and the pressure on the ground, what is the rainfall, all this information is required. And all these things were deployed throughout India, and the information is flown from unattended stations to the spacecraft. Spacecraft will collect those information and pass on to the centralized meteorological department, where they can make predictions and pass it on. So these are all the things that we consider that should be put into the consideration when we are building the satellite-based national assets.
Thank you. Tanmay?
You know, when the tsunami hit India a couple of years ago, you know, especially people in the eastern coast were affected very much. The government discussed that there needs to be some kind of a warning system, an early warning system that needs to be built. And together we built with the Indian National Center of Oceanographic Research a tsunami early warning system today, which is getting data from over 3,000 ocean buoys, satellite images, temperature stations, seismic stations from all over the world. And every time that there is an earthquake anywhere in the world, there is an algorithm that we have developed for INCOIS, which is giving in a few seconds a predictability of whether there is going to be a tsunami attack as a result of the earthquake, and if so, which are the centers or areas that are susceptible to be hit by the tsunami. So this is a big national asset that has been created, and as a byproduct of this national asset, which is giving on SMS, on the internet, as well as on email, depending on the intensity of the earthquake. If it is above 5.0 on the Richter scale, I subscribe to the service, I get an email, and if it is more than 5.0 on the Richter scale, I get an SMS alert. So that differentiates the intensity as to where the tsunami may hit in case of an earthquake under the ocean or wherever. As a byproduct of that project, today we are able to offer a web-based service for the fishermen who are going out to the sea for fishing, because from the images and the ocean temperature control, we are able to pinpoint a shoal of fish as to where they are moving, in which latitude, longitude they are moving today. And that service is of immense business benefit to the fishermen who are actually paying for this information, because right now they don't have to go all over the sea to fish. They know exactly the location where the fish is available, and they are able to get the catch for the day. So this example is again to share with you my earlier point about look at the outcome of what that asset is going to deliver for the country. Focus on the outcome, don't focus on the input. In my instance, government traditionally has been looking at IT only to procure IT, but not knowing what to do with all the IT. We are simply submitting, let us shift our focus from IT as an input to the outcome of what IT can deliver for the people. And if we do that, we can see a lot of benefit accruing for ourselves. The second national asset that we created was the MCA 21 program. This was in the years, every year the World Bank issues a doing business in the country report. And India was about 87th on the list based on certain parameters of assessment that the World Bank has on countries. And one of the parameters was how many days does it take in India to set up a new company. So under the mission mode program of the National E-Governance Plan, TCS and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs partnered together, and on a BOOT basis, we built a program, a completely digitalized program for the ministry, where in the past it used to take 80 days for a company to be created in India. After implementation of the system called the MCA 21 program, we have been able to set up a company, a brand new company, in 2 hours.
Very good.
That has cascaded the position of India in the entire foreign direct investment climate, where people today sitting in London can actually sit in their offices and apply for a company and get a certificate of incorporation without having to visit any government office in India. And that has made a huge transformation in the way the government interacts with companies from an inauguration, from an opening standpoint. So there are several examples. I think time is short, but again, the focus being, let's look at the optimal use of national assets. Let us look at the outcome that the assets deliver to its people. That is where I think we should be focusing, not on what is it going into building the national asset, how much time is it taking, but let's stay focused on the outcome as the key focus for development of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy?
That was rather excellent. I like the idea of being able to track fish. If I ever go fishing, I might subscribe to that system. Gives you a bit of an advantage, I fancy. Right. If you go back to what I was talking about just now in the 19th century, you can see that to get the national assets, there was huge investment by countries. Now, today, Western countries in particular cannot necessarily finance that tremendous investment from their own coffers. They haven't got the expertise, they haven't got the skills, they certainly in the UK today would appear not to have the money, but we still need to develop assets, infrastructure, hospitals, power stations, all of the things that from a hard infrastructure we can't do without. But you've got to pay for them. And you can't avoid not having them, and it's very difficult to deliver them. You were saying about focusing on the outcomes, and for all the project managers in here, there's a key message in that. You really should focus on the end game most of the time. Developing countries, established countries like UK, America, Europe, and Australia, for example, are using different financial models to fund their projects. We're probably all familiar with PPP, PFI. Today, on the Hyderabad Metro project, that's a model PPP project where the investment is for a 30-year plus lifetime. That is undoubtedly a fine example of long vision, long investment, and a very, very smart way of using money to gain an asset for the country. I suspect in the near term you'll see more PPP, more PFI being used in India. As previously, here's a cautionary tale about PPP. The National Audit Office in the UK has examined the PPPs and the benefit to the government. There is, in the mature PPP market, especially where the returns on the investments are low, a secondary tier trading house of PPP ownership, so that the assets actually end up with companies that are not UK based. That's causing some consternation in the UK, and maybe it's just something that if PPP develops here, that somebody should look at. And on that, thank you very much again.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, we have several questions from the audience. Before I take up all these questions, I want to ask a question to the panel. Please be brief, maybe just a one-line answer that I need, and after that I'll take up the questions. So the question is, Now that we have appreciated the fact that the creation of national asset is necessary for a growth of a country, question is, why is that we are unable to create national asset at a faster pace in this country? What is hindering the creation of national asset in this country? Is it that we can or we do not have the program and project management capabilities?
But we have taken already 5 years. Why is it so? There is a procedures, there is a process, there is a tendering requirements, civil, private, assessing it, choosing the right person to do the right job. These are the issues that come in the way probably of delays and also not doing the job properly on time. I'm just giving one example. Similarly, we can give hundreds of examples in this. So what could be done is trust the people. If you are made the head of this, that's how they did it in Delhi. In Delhi, there was Mr. Sridharan. He was given the task. He could choose the subcontractor who would give the correct results, and the Delhi Metro came into being as early as last 5 years back and in a quicker period of time. So can we work on these sort of basis?
All right, thank you.
I'll keep it short. I think in my opinion, Professor, the accessibility of the project management methodology and how we do project management to the broader mass, which is going to create the national asset, is not available today. I think we need to create a framework that all this intellectual power of project management best practice should go out to the broader mass so that the national assets get created. I think that's my perspective.
All right, how about you?
Okay, as you are aware, ISRO is the high-tech area where we don't have such type of components where we have to depend most of the time from the imports. And we have gone through in ISRO, the technology denials or ITAR getting clearances. So we have gone through the phases, and today we have developed our own technologies where without depending on any of these denials, we can manage our own launch vehicle programs, our own satellite programs, and own applications. I will give an example. Processor is the microprocessor, one of the important component, both in the satellite launch vehicle or in the satellite itself. And because we are now and then we are getting into the technology denial regimes, we have developed in ISRO our own processor named as a Vikram processor. And in earlier flights, we are flying one of the Vikram processor, one of the imported processor, and we don't want to depend anymore on them. And recently, whatever the flight we have, PSLV C-17, we have flown with both Vikram processors, and the rocket has delivered the satellite exactly within plus minus 1 kilometer accuracies. So today, that means I mean to say that we have a very good program management officers in ISRO, and both in the launch vehicle development area and the satellite development area, and in the satellites also we are subdivided into the communication satellite, remote sensing satellite, and re-entry vehicles, and astronautical satellites. So we have a very good program management, and the program manager will be having a technology forecast, and they will be giving the alerts, and they will be giving whenever we need a new systems, what is our alternate arrangement. So with that, we are able to successfully manage our own missions, and after late, and ISRO has grown to such an extent, we are not able to handle these commercial things with our own technical groups. So there was an organization called Antrix, which is supposed to take care of the commercial wing. So we have in ISRO very good program management system, which is successful. The success you are seeing and enjoying that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mari?
In my area, Professor, where I'm dealing with e-governance, you asked the question that can national assets be fast-tracked and can it be accelerated? English is a very funny language. E-governance, the first 3 alphabets of e-governance is ego. E-G-O. So, what is very good in Karnataka is taboo in Tamil Nadu. What is excellent in Delhi will not be touched in Rajasthan. It is mostly the mindset we have to get out of. To be able to replicate something that is delivering is something that we have to shed our ego and adopt. and only then can we fast track national asset creation and national asset realization in terms of benefit for the people.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Excellent. Ego. Fantastic. The Don't Feel Alone. In a survey conducted in China, which has got the fastest growing country in the world, they identified 3 significant challenges for them to continue developing their national assets. Lack of qualified and experienced project managers. Misunderstanding of the roles and the responsibilities of companies to deliver projects, and limited knowledge of skills of the practitioners delivering project management. So here we sit in a PMI conference. From here, you will go back armed, hopefully, with more knowledge and when you came. If you continue to attend, to invest in your own education in project management, your companies invest in project management. These companies, I all know, do. Professor runs the Larsen Toubro PMI Institute. If we get that growth, we'll definitely get the reward that project management can deliver for the assets of the nation. But the onus, it's on us to learn and deliver. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are running short of time, so I need to take the questions from the audience. Otherwise, they won't let me go out, okay? So, there is a wonderful question here from Suresh Krishna, TVS Motor Company. Okay, anybody can pick this question and answer. I'm going to read out the question. Why is it that Indian infrastructure is not planned for distributed population? Is vertical growth a requirement? Planning does not have a vision, or planners does not have a vision. It is chaotic and outdated from global standard. Is that so? That's a question. Anybody? Would you like to take it? All right. Want to take it? Okay. Why is that Indian infrastructure is not planned for the entire population? It is kind of selective population infrastructure is getting
So I
created.
think I can answer partially to this question. In ISRO, I think this is not correct. And when we are building the satellites for the DTH applications, where we need strong signals for the direct home transmission, we are not having a beam which will transmit on the Andaman Nicobar, who are our brothers and sisters are staying there. In the recently launched GSAT-8, we have put a separate beam. They will get same amount of signal what we are getting on the mainland. And in future, we are going to take care, and whatever we are getting in Bangalore or Delhi, every part of the India, all Indians are going to get that. I think that we are trying to do the justice.
I would like to add to this. Basically, it is a question of the vision of the leader. If you are talking about states, then you must have wonderful leaders who have the vision to create the infrastructure for the masses. I think that is where one of the major problems of infrastructure and national asset creation is. We need to have multiple Sam Pitrodas in the system who can create the infrastructure for all of you.
Yeah, I think I agree with Suresh Krishna's question that, it is chaotic. I mean, if you take the railways, for example, it's no surprise that the maximum development happens from wherever the railway minister comes from. And that is really not fair for the rest of the country. So I think we are somewhere missing the big picture and the long-term visioning. And again, I think priorities are stunted by the tenures of leadership in the positions that they hold. And there has to be some amount of thinking beyond the tenure. And also, we have to get out of the syndrome of undoing what a previous person has done. We waste a lot of national exchequer money in doing some of that. Yeah. We need to have a long-term roadmap, and whoever comes into the position has to only progress it forward and not take it back. I think these are human traits and DNA issues that we have, which is causing this kind of a very accurate assessment.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question here from Anash Sashi. This is a good question. I think, Jeremy, you should take this question and answer it from a different perspective, okay? Most of the government projects are not delivered as promised. The result is that the assets are inefficient, all right? The assets are inefficient, the government assets. And how can we influence the government projects? The importance of quality, ethics, value addition, maintenance, etc. How can Project Management Institute contribute to this?
It's a great question. Most of the government assets are delivered inefficiently. I think you'll find that expectations of delivery are managed inefficiently. We as project managers have to do several things, and one of the key things is manage the expectations of stakeholders to our projects. So we cannot, let's take the two examples. Let's take T5 in the UK and Wembley Stadium in the UK. Both multi-million pounds investments. T5, and I'll not mention the baggage handling system in this discourse, but T5 delivered what it promised. If you go back to the business case and you have an examination of that, it delivered it. It was delivered under a BAA open agreement where the risk and the understanding was shared amongst all the parties to its delivery. Perhaps in this day and age, a model of construction delivery. Wembley Stadium, fantastic that it is, was delivered in an open competition based on lowest price and transfer of risk, with very, very little understanding of stakeholder management. The outcome, evident to see. T5, notwithstanding the baggage handling upset, was considered a huge success. Wembley Stadium, today it's a great stadium, but it wasn't delivered on time. Most of the contractors and consultants ended up in litigation. Most of them lost money. And there was an Australian firm that no longer operates in the UK. The issue, I think, for the questionnaire is not so much projects by the government aren't being delivered on time, to quality, to the satisfaction of the stakeholders, is that project managers have got a responsibility to engage with all parties so that everybody understands what's being achieved, and not to set false expectations, either driven by government or driven by private owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have another wonderful question here. This one is about, we have always seen national asset development in India being benchmarked with the United States of America. Is that our target? Or should we create goals that are specific to our own needs and may even exceed US standards? That's a question. Question is by Nebu Joy. I want to take this question and answer because I started off comparing our national assets with the US national assets. I would like to take this on, then give it to you for answering. You know, in life, you have to benchmark yourself with some country, some people, and go further up. In progression, as a country, we are looking at countries around us and seeing how they are progressing. That's the only reason we are benchmarking our national assets currently with US. I am not saying that is the standard to follow, no. And I am with you in saying that let us create our own standards in creation of national assets. I think we should do this introspectively and we should create as a benchmark for the world to see. a developing country can create national asset despite all the hardships, with all the technologies that are available here, with the kind of population that we have? That is the answer. US is only an example. There are hundreds of countries around. And I'm a proud Indian, and I believe we have the capability to create standards. And as an organization where I work, Larsen & Toubro is trying to do this. We are trying to create benchmarks in project management. You can see Jeremy has come all the way from UK to work with us, which means that we are trying to learn from him and saying that we will create our own standards later. That's the answer to you. Anyone else wanting to contribute?
Well done, I completely, you just said the same things I was about to say. Benchmark is not necessarily a bad thing. We need to have certain expectations, we need to have certain outcome, we need to have something in mind that we want to aspire to, because otherwise there is nothing that you are comparing against. Unless you have that vision, I think in order to set the asset, that you have to have certain vision. But the question is, what is that you benchmark against? So that is the bigger debate. A lot of, we're talking about reverse Brendan, we're talking about US, or talking about Western world. There's a lot of reverse Brendan happening right now. If you look at any organization today, I think the 30% or 40% of people coming in from the other world and working here in India. I think it's about being global as well. While we want to talk about our national asset, but at the same time we are a global citizen too. I think we need to also consider how this national asset becomes a global benchmark. So that's the vision that we need to aspire to, in my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, we are actually running short of time. I have a whole bunch of questions here. I don't know how to pick them, but some of them I will take it offline. But let me ask a question. This is for you, Nageshwar. Why we are not encouraging research scientists from childhood school level? Do we have enough scientists in India as national assets?
Okay, that's a good question. And some time back or presently, before the 6th pay commission, ISRO is not untouchable, because the best talented, morning he was telling, his dream was to join ISRO and contribute in the space technology. But there is a much more money available outside, so we have jumped there. So today we are much better off, and we know that we are not getting the best talent. So that's why we have created our own institute called IIST, Indian Institute of Space Technology and Sciences at Trivandrum, and we are training. Today we have conduct our own entrance test, or earlier few years back we are taking from the IIT stream, and we are getting a very good students. The first batch from the institute has rolled out, and they have joined the working centers, and we are going to build our space programs with them. At same thing, we are trying to go down. If you see people like me going around villages, colleges, and campaigning, teaching them what is the space, how to make the satellite. And today you see a lot of requests are coming. Yesterday we had a review from the satellite from the IIT Kanpur, and Bangalore NITE Institute made a satellite student sat, and today PSIT making one more satellite, VIT making one satellite. Lot of people are taken, and we have a separate cell which is going to colleges, universities, campaigning, and they are trying to take up this, and they are building the satellite, and we are providing a launch support from our PSLV. I think you will appreciate that.
Thank you. That question was by Mr. S. Gokulan. Oh, you want to answer?
One more point in there. Ladies and gentlemen, the times are changing. We have seen when we interview the youngsters for the job in our own company and in other companies, people who come for the interview, the young people, ladies or the gentlemen, they ask for the appointment in R&D. That is their first priority. We want somebody in the production, testing, management even, but the first priority about majority of the youngsters is R&D. So the times are changing. Our earlier thinking was get a job which gives you a salary, carry on and all that. So that is changing, which is for the good.
Thank you. Tanmoy, I have a question for you, which is from the audience, of course. Mr. Sagar Joshi has asked this question. What are the top 3 things to build good quality local assets by local governments?
I think the first quality that is required is the will. It's not about any other thing, technology, resources, money. It is the will of the leadership. That's the first quality that is required. The will and the vision what is it that you want to leave as a legacy? What is it that you want to leave in posterity for the next generation? So that's the first quality that is required. The second quality is to identify able partners to deliver projects. Very often, the constraints of the procurement process end up with the worst capable partner to deliver the project because of the phenomenon of what I call the T1L1 utopia. You have to be technically the best at the least possible price. This is just utopia, nothing else but utopia. So we have to move towards a more of a quality come cost base, World Bank standards of procurement, so that the focus is on capability, experience, and there is a certain weightage for price. Here, unfortunately, everything is L1. So that's the second shift of focus and quality that we need to look at. And the third is the permanency of tenure of the project allocated resources from the government side. Very often, our experience is at the peak of the project, there is a transfer and the person's changed, and there is a new person who comes who starts doing it his own way and reinvents the wheel. So, to summarize, first is the will and the determination. Second is the ability to choose the appropriate partner. And the third is the permanency of tenure of project resources from the government side. If three are done, every project is bound to succeed.
Thank you. Okay, I have been warned that my time is over. I need to close this. So before I close, just want to ask one last question. I always have the right to ask that question. Just a simple answer. Do you think project management capabilities are required for managing national assets or creating national assets? Yes or no?
Undeniably, yes.
Okay. Tanmoy,
Absolutely, yes.
how about you?
We need to have a strong management system.
Absolutely. So you all agree? So let us create the framework as project managers to create the national asset creation as a framework. Thank you.
We'd like to take this time to thank the panel members, and I'd like to invite the host, Mr. Tejas, to come up on stage as we present a small token of our appreciation to the panel members. We'd like to thank Colonel H.S. Shankar. Thank you, sir, very much indeed for being here and being a part of the session. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to thank Mr. M. Nageshwar Rao.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much indeed for being a part of the panel member. We'd like to thank Mr. Tanmoy Chakravarti.
Tanmoy, yeah, we'll do that. After this.
Thank you very much indeed. We'd like to thank Mr. Rakesh Barak. I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Mr. Jeremy Lambert. Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah.
And last but not least, to the panel anchor, Professor Krishnamurthy. Thank you very much indeed for chairing this session.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.